Have you ever sat down to watch a debate between a religious person and an atheist? Genuinely curious, genuinely open, and then spent the entire video waiting for an answer that never arrives. You get to the end, the debaters shake hands, the crowd applauds, and you sit there thinking, is that it? I've done this more times than I'd like to admit, and for a long time, I thought the problem was me. Maybe I just wasn't smart enough to follow along. Maybe I needed to read more, study more, brush up on my Aquinas or my Dawkins to recognise the nuances being discussed. But that's not it. That's not it at all. The problem isn't you. The problem is the actual debate itself. And I want to explain exactly why. When a religious person and an atheist sit across from each other, they're not just disagreeing about God. They're disagreeing about what it even means to answer a question. A religious person tends to draw on narrative, on pattern, on the kind of meaning that accumulates over time and across human experience. They're asking you to feel the weight of something. An atheist tends to work differently. They're looking for errors, logical inconsistencies, places where the argument breaks down under scrutiny. They're asking you to think through something. And here's the thing, both of those approaches, in their own terms, work. The religious person answers the questions their side finds satisfying. The atheist answers the questions their side finds satisfying. Everyone leaves technically undefeated in their own way, which is frustrating. But it's not actually the deepest problem here. There's something else going on underneath all of that, and it's the real reason you feel so empty when these things wrap up. Religious debates have, over time, become a product of nuance. That sounds like a compliment. It isn't. What I mean is this. Nobody in these debates is actually asking the big questions anymore. Nobody is sitting down and asking if God is real. Does the afterlife exist? Which religion, if any, is actually onto something? Those questions have been quietly retired, and I get why. They're enormous. They're essentially yes or no questions dressed up in the most complicated outfit. You can't just answer whether God is real in a 45-minute debate. The question is too exposed, too easy to lose. So instead, debaters pick a topic, a rabbit hole, a specific, manageable sub-question that still feels connected to the big question. Something with enough weight to justify its place at the table. The problem of evil, the cosmological argument, the fine-tuning argument, all perfectly reasonable places to start. But here's where it starts to go wrong. These debates demand precision. That's part of what makes them feel rigorous and legitimate. And precision ultimately means going further down the rabbit hole. So the problem of evil, as a discussion point, becomes looking at the deductive argument from evil, which then becomes the inductive argument, which opens up the free will defense, which then branches into a dozen more subcategories, each one more specific than the last. And the whole way down, the debate still tries to cling on to the big question. It still has the shape of it, just not the gravity. Because here's what actually happened at the end of all that. One debater maybe scores a point on a subcategory of the deductive argument relating to the problem of evil. And the audience, whichever side they're on, looks at that and thinks, alright, you won a point. But you didn't answer the question. You didn't answer the big question I came here for. The big question is the entire reason the viewer showed up. Think about why people actually watch these debates. It's not really for sport, or at least not entirely. It's because humans have always wanted to understand where we came from. whether any of this means anything, and what, if anything, happens when it ends. Those questions live in everyone. They don't go away because you don't go to church. They don't go away because you've mastered all of the right arguments. People watch these debates, hoping to leave a little more settled than when they arrived. Maybe not with answers. Most people are realistic enough to know that's not on the table, but they at least want to leave with better questions, a clearer sense of the territory. Instead, they leave having watched two very clever people argue about a very specific concept within a very specific argument that has almost nothing to do with what they actually wanted to know. The further down the rabbit hole the debate goes, the further away the viewer ends up from what they came for. Not closer, further. Now here's the part I think most people miss. The rabbit hole drift isn't accidental. It isn't debaters losing the thread, making a mistake, getting distracted. It's a rational change. Think about it from where the debater is standing. The big question, is God real, cannot be won in 45 minutes. Both sides know it. So what do? You find a smaller question that can be won, one where you've got the stronger position, the cleaner logic, and that territory is always going to be narrower than what's above it, always more technical, always further from anything the viewer can actually take home. The debate format creates an incentive to retreat, to find winnable ground, and winnable ground is, by definition, ground that the other side doesn't mind conceding. So it's not just that debaters lose the thread, it's that the whole debate structure rewards them for losing the thread. Which brings me to an uncomfortable conclusion. The problem isn't the debaters, and it isn't really the format, not exactly. It's that we keep scoring these things like they're supposed to settle something, when we know deep down that they can't. So maybe the fix isn't a better debate. Maybe it's a better scoreboard. I get why many fans of the debate scene aren't actually watching debates for an answer to a question. They instead watch it to see two grandmasters battle it out over the figurative chessboard. They watch to see which side has done their homework, which side can defend a position under pressure. It's essentially become a team sport. Every time our side wins a point, we cheer. Every time the other side wins a point, we call it a cheap shot. The big questions were never going to be decided in a lecture hall. They were never on the table to begin with. What was on the table was much smaller, much more technical, and honestly, kind of fun to watch once you stop waiting for it to be something else. So the next time you get to the end of one of these debates, and ask yourself, is that it? Where are all of the answers to my questions? That's not the debate failing you. That's you keeping score on a board that was never in play. Watch for the craft, for the uncomfortable silence as one side backs the other into an intellectual cul-de-sac. Watch for the moment your side scores a point and you feel that flicker of vindication right alongside them. Somewhere in all of that, an answer to a big question might fall on your lap. Let it. Just don't go looking for it.